Welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, here we go, Josh.
Okay, so today we're talking about Conclave. It's the Edward Berger film, and it's essentially Ralph Fiennes plays a cardinal who's responsible for leading the conclave to choose the next pope of the Catholic Church.
Elect.
So, okay. The next pope-elect of the Catholic Church?
Well, the process is the election of the pope.
Sure, yes. Well, but
Choose is,
yes.
of course, a word, but it's an
Yes.
actual election.
That's true. Yeah, it is a very, which is interesting that we're doing this week because the week that we're recording it is the week of the
I saw it
United
on
States
election
election.
day.
Really?
I did.
Interesting. Okay.
I did. Yeah.
Well, see, and I mean, when I watched it the day after election day, but when I watched it, I mean, I couldn't help but think about elections and all that stuff and about politics, because ideally in something like a church, that you would think that everyone would be above board and there would be no politics associated with something like that. But obviously that's not the case, because ultimately there is faith and there is religion, and there are the people who are responsible for presenting that religion and for representing that religion, and people inherently are flawed no matter what you believe. If you believe in a higher power or whatever, like the boots on the ground of any religion are human beings, so there's gonna be messiness, and this movie puts it right out front that there's a lot of messiness in any process associated with religion, and this just bears it all, and it does it, I think, in a very clear way. It's a very clear way of filmmaking. Edward Berger is able to convey ideas, in my opinion, very clearly, and there were only hints of extreme style, and I was kind of looking for something like that, but I also didn't see All Quiet on the Western Front. So did you watch that movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you did see that.
I didn't see it.
I loved it.
I don't actually no, I didn't see it. I was about to say, like, if I did, I didn't remember it, but no, I did not see it. So I didn't see it. That was the World War I movie remake of a previous movie from a long time ago. I do know that, like, he's a well-regarded director, and this film is in good hands with him, but I didn't see too many flashes of artistry or filmmaking. He was very, like, the story takes the lead in this film, and the performances take the lead in this film. So, I mean, yeah, Ralph Fiennes, I'm here for it. Stanley Tucci all day. John Lithgow, solid performance. But I actually thought about you when I was watching it, because this is a perfect play.
Oh.
It, as a movie, it's fine, but you could totally set this play in the Sistine Chapel and be done.
Yeah, 100%.
That's it. So, yeah, what did you think?
And actually, because we've talked about one-room movies. We talked about Rope and Breakfast Club and all those films. And there are plays that transpose to movies, and you can tell they were set in one, and they went out to a bunch of different places, and they expanded and stuff like that. I actually think that I agree with you. It'd be a great play, but there's something about being sequestered and being in one area that makes it that much more thrilling and that much more suspenseful in a different way than your traditional thrillers or suspense movies are set out. Suspense movies and thrillers usually have some people creeping around a corner and doing that very physical thing where they're having to go into a house or having to go into a warehouse. It's always a warehouse. There's always water dripping. You ever notice that?
And like blades just hanging from the ceiling for no reason.
Or broken glass, big panes of broken glass, like in Footloose. It's always like that, but in Footloose it was fun. So it actually added to the tension, being sequestered and being in a one room, essentially, although they go to different places and they even travel outside at one point. But yeah, I thought it was thrilling, and I thought it was subtle, and I thought it's an adult. You have to listen to this film. And I'm not saying younger people can't hear it, and younger people can't watch it or shouldn't watch it. I'm saying that there are certain movies that are targeted for certain age groups, and there is certain maturity that comes with certain films. And when I was younger, I probably could have listened to it and gotten into it. But I'm not sure how many people would. I'm not saying they can't. I'm saying that it's very purposefully mature. It's an interesting subject matter, and I was raised very strict Roman Catholic, so I know all about this. I tell you a really quick story. I think it was the 7th grade. And I went to very strict Catholic school, and I was like, and I raised my hand, and I was a very shy kid, believe it or not. And I was like, hey, wait, the Pope, the person that is the Pope is infallible, right? Yes, that is God's blessing. But wait, he's infallible before this election, and then a little cloud of white smoke goes up instead of gray smoke, and now he's fallible before this thing. Now he's infallible. What? And the teacher was like, we're in math class, Paul. But I knew in my mind's eye that we were in a religious school. Like, she had to answer my question. And I kind of frustrated her so much so that she made me go down to the principal's office, not because I was in trouble, but because I don't think she really gave me a good answer. So I was kind of pressing it. How can a human being be fallible their whole life and then be infallible? And of course, with this religion, and I'm not mocking it and I'm not judging it, it comes down to faith. And it comes down to, you believe that this is what God does, that once the election happens and that little cloud of white smoke goes up instead of gray, blackish smoke goes up, then he's blessed and he is now infallible because God speaks through him. Mm-hmm. And it just was perplexing to me when I was a young person. I just don't understand how you could make mistakes your whole entire life, and now you can't make mistakes. It's just something I couldn't grasp. So that said, I know a lot about this subject matter, but I thought it was fascinating that somebody made a movie about something that's never really been filmed and never really been seen and is not documented on any level. I don't know what they do in modern day times now. I don't know if they film it, if they document it through technology. I don't know what they do, because a lot of things change when technology changes. It's not that they didn't want to film it before. It's just that they didn't have any capabilities of it, whatever, 100 years ago, whenever it was. And plus, the Pope is a life term, so he usually lasts a pretty long time.
Usually, unless they abdicate. Yeah.
Which has only happened
It's
twice?
happened very recently.
Yeah, I know. About that movie with Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, the two popes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't think it's happened many more times than that, though.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. I know that there was a long period of time, from the 70s until the 2000s, when it was Pope John Paul II.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't anything. My whole lifetime, there wasn't anything. And then in the last 15 years, there's been 2 conclaves. So yeah. It's a bit anomalous, but yeah, I would agree with you that there's definitely a lot of mystery to the process. And this movie is based on a book written by Robert Harris, a 2016 book written by Robert Harris, who also has written other books that have been turned into media properties. One of them was Archangel, which was a TV movie starring Daniel Craig. This was kind of post Road to Perdition Daniel Craig, pre...
Oh, right.
Yeah, and it was kind of pre-James Bond Daniel Craig. So, yeah, it was that pocket right there, I think, which was, it was decent. But yeah, so there's a certain amount of documentation and research associated with the Robert Harris book that didn't necessarily translate to the film. But I think that there were certain things that they left out using artistic license for good reason, because they would kind of complicate the situation, and it's not necessary. It's a good story as far as the situation of one of the cardinals in the film, where the previous pope who just passed away had granted cardinalship, or named someone a cardinal without letting anybody else know. And there's definitely a procedure associated with that in the Catholic Church to this day. But there are rules associated with that person and whether they could potentially be pope or not. And those details were not addressed in the film, whereas they were directly addressed in the book. But
did you read the book?
No, I did not. I just did some research on the book to film transition. But But ultimately,
Interesting, because I had some questions about that. I was
yeah,
like,
they don't really they gloss
and they
over
zip
something
it.
like that.
They
Yeah.
zip by it too. They just want you to accept it, and they want the shock value of it. And I get why they wanted it
Sure.
that way, because
I,
it is like,
I could tell that there was some funniness about halfway through the film
yeah,
when they do the first vote, and it's kind of like, there's essentially a cardinal who kind of shows up out of nowhere, and that cardinal gets one vote or two votes. I think it's one vote immediately in the first vote. And it's like, wait, these guys just met this guy and somebody wants him to be pope? Doesn't make sense. So that right there was a little bit, this is head scratching to me. And yes, I had a couple of issues with the film, but really ultimately I always will go back to the performances and the dynamism between the characters, and the performances were spot on. I mean, I could watch Stanley Tucci read the phone book and I'd be good. He is bought in to this movie. Like his character is bought, and I thought he was going to have a much larger part in this film, but he really doesn't. He has 4 scenes in the movie, really, maybe 5, and
a couple of really essential ones.
They're essential scenes, yes, but ultimately he has really codified scenes in the film, and he delivers, and I thought that was. I mean, I expected as much from him, and I would not have expected this from John Lithgow if I hadn't seen the show The Old Man. Have you seen that show at all?
No,
on
not
FX?
yet. No.
Jeff Bridges. The second season just came out. I haven't watched it, but the first season is really good, and John Lithgow is very good.
Have you not liked John Lithgow before and not really seen him a lot before?
I've seen him in Third Rock from the Sun and Buckaroo Banzai, and I mean, like, there's like a handful of movies that I've seen him in and shows.
So you haven't seen Terms of Endearment, you haven't seen World According to Garp, you haven't seen. Oh,
keep
John
going.
Lithgow's all over the place. Madam Butterfly and Butterfly, dude, he's a master.
Okay,
he has an Oscar or Oscar nomination, and I think he has 2 Tonys or a Tony at least.
You got to remember,
something.
Yeah, the first time I ever saw him was Harry and the Hendersons. That's the first time I
love that movie.
It was fine. It was on for like all the time in the 80s.
It's a
on
sweet
HBO.
movie.
It was weird. I don't know. It was weird. I have a weird. I don't know.
Well, you were a little.
I felt bad for Harry or whatever.
Yeah, of course you did. You're supposed to.
I know, but I was like, why are they doing this to this guy? Come on.
Yeah, but ultimately it works out. Oh, he's nominated for 2 Oscars. World According to Garp in Terms of Endearment.
Okay.
And he has won a Primetime Emmy 2.
For Third Rock from the Sun? Or
well, he has. Okay, it's too much. He has like 3 Emmys from Third Rock. He has a lot of Emmys. He's like 7 Emmys.
All right.
So he has 5 more than you.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that John Lithgow sucks.
Say.
I'm just saying.
No, I know you're not. I know
that I had not appreciated his capabilities until The Old Man. And now I do appreciate them. So seeing him in this film, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's right. That's John Lithgow.
That's right. That's John Lithgow.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I expect.
I've now recognized him. He does exist.
That's right. Yeah.
No. Oh, gosh.
But yeah, I mean so performances up and down were great for me.
2 Tonys.
Dang, jeez.
2 Tonys, 6 Golden Globes, 2 Tonys, 6 Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, 3 Screen Actors, Drama Desk 4 awards. He has 4 Grammy Awards, and he has 2 Oscar nominations. John Lithgow is the man.
Yeah, he's okay. Anyway.
He doesn't have a local primetime Emmy, does he? No.
Exactly. That's right. Did you know that this movie had kind of like a whiz-bang ending, or?
I suspected it.
I didn't know.
There was some, it's so subtle that it's off-putting. So I was like, okay, they're underplaying all of this. So something is not right. And then at some point in it, I will have to watch the movie again to actually determine when that is. Literally, they go ding dong dong in the soundtrack. Like, it's literally that type of cue. it's not that. And I don't mean any disrespect to whoever wrote the music for this film, but it literally is that kind of beat. And so I was like, so they're ramping up the Thriller soundtrack, not Michael Jackson, the suspense thriller movie soundtrack, but things are still very even toned in language and conversation and dialogue. So I was like, and then as soon as Stanley Tucci said, I don't want it, you should have it. And Ray Fiennes is like, this is not me. I was like, do I trust him or don't I? And at first I didn't trust him. I thought Ralph Fiennes was manipulating the whole system become Pope.
Now,
I thought, and it was going to be like pulling the wool over your eyes with this very human, humble character all of a sudden going, ha ha ha.
Like
I really wanted
he gets mustache twisting. They spent too much time on Ralph Fiennes. Like, we're too invested in Ralph Fiennes, and that was my feeling. Like, I felt like it was. I think it would be a betrayal of the audience. I think that there are definitely filmmakers out there who do the twist for you, or who do the whatever twisting of the knife on the audience, and they're malicious towards their audience. But it seemed like we spent so much time with Ralph Fiennes' Cardinal Lawrence character. Like that was a bridge too far. It was too much for the film to do that. And so I didn't necessarily expect that. But the way that they utilize like the Isabella Rossellini character, and they introduced her way early on. She didn't have a speaking role. Like, she didn't have a line in the film until more than halfway through the film, even though we saw her very early on. I thought that was an interesting way to introduce a character, and also to embed the idea to the audience of the difference between the cardinals, the archbishops, and the supporting nuns of the conclave, and say, like, this is the hierarchy, this is the setup, and this is what is expected and not expected. And we're not even going to give this nun character, the primary nun character, a speaking role until way into the film. And I thought that was a purposeful director's choice or screenplay choice, I guess.
Yeah, but there's a look she gives when one of them walks out of the room, and she turns and she looks as they're walking out, and you're like, she has something up her sleeve, or she knows something that they're going to rely on her later on. You know that there's a power behind this very small performance that people even talk an Oscar nomination, but I think it's because they love her more than maybe the part deserves it. But if it is something that did get an Oscar nomination, I could see why. There is this intensity behind her that she really is running the show on some level. And she's running part of the show, the essential part of the show, of keeping the men probably cleaned,
fed,
and clothed, and fed, and organization. But she also knows something that is a key factor, and you know she knows it from the moment you look at her. No. But it's not something you could play as an actor. You just have that, and she just has it. So praise be.
Yeah, and also just one of her lines was, although we sisters are supposed to be invisible, God has nevertheless given us eyes and ears. That's kind of I know you don't think that we're paying attention, but guess what? We are, and this is actually a part of the situation. We can inform you of certain aspects of the situation that you may be interested in, and this may come in handy in your decision making. That kind of a thing. And maybe in generations past, or in other scenarios, a nun may not feel emboldened enough to bring up these certain ideas or these particular facts, but this particular nun feels like it would be pertinent to the scenario, to the situation that they're in. And ultimately, all of them are on the same team. They're all on the team of choosing the next leader of the Catholic Church. And you can tell that all of them really do take it seriously. And that tension is kept throughout the film. and ultimately you're hoping for the one thing to win out over the other. And that's the other thing I did want to bring up is there's so much, and Edward Berger does spend a lot of time on the formalism of everything, as taking off certain garments, putting on certain garments, taking off this rope-based thing around your neck and putting on a different rope-based thing around your neck, closing the Pope's quarters and putting the ribbon across it and sealing it with a wax seal, all of that stuff. It's very purposeful. There's a procedure to doing it, destroying the Pope's ring. All of that is accurate from what I've read, but it's also, there's a process, a procedure, a ritual associated with it, which is very important to the Catholic Church.
Absolutely, it is. You were not allowed. I was an altar boy. You were not allowed to do certain things before certain things were done. You laid certain things out. You did certain things at a time, and you weren't allowed to even, you couldn't just separate duties here. You go get the wine. I'll go get the host. We'll meet in the middle. It did not work that way at all. And nothing happened before the priest came in and blessed us all before I almost said ceremony, before the Mass. And so, yeah, I'm very aware of those rituals, and maybe not these particular rituals, but the Catholic Church. And that I actually admire even to this day. I agree. Think the reason why I love theater is because of the Catholic Church. It's very theatrical and it's very ritualistic. You go back there after not being there for 20 years and you know every word you knew when you were 10 years old. You just do. And in a way, there's a security in that.
Yes.
There's a safety in that.
There's also a connective tissue in that, and there's a tradition in that. So, that the things that you do in whatever Mass that you go into at any given Catholic Church is going to be maybe not the same, but is similar to a Mass that happened 1,500 years ago. Something like that. I mean, that is a shared lineage, a shared history, and a community. And I totally understand that. I mean, I go to a non-denominational church, and there are certain things that we do that skew towards other Christian traditions, and there are certain things we do that are totally different than Christian tradition. But I think that, I grew up in the Presbyterian church, which was very rigid and structured, and there were certain things that I could count on. And being an engineer, I appreciate that, and I know that when I knew that when I went to church, this would happen, and then that would happen, and it's similar to the Catholic Church, I guess, in those ways. But I do think that there's that tension, like we were talking about, that you try to make sure that ultimately, at least for me, that the right goal is the goal. And so for them, that's, I think, that tension where it's sure, should we do everything exactly how previous conclaves have been done? Fine. But at the same time, is the church capable of evolving? That's the biggest question.
The interesting thing about those, but they do that through character study. They do that through what the characters choose to talk about and do. And you could tell that the one, the pompous one that they don't want to become
the conservative, the super conservative one.
Yeah, and when he goes, well, do you want the Pope to look like him? And he turns and he looks at the African American male. You know exactly what he's thinking. Makes it very obvious what he's thinking. He literally says it. Do you want people looking at that face basically as the Pope? That can't be. So you get those aspects of the human throughout these characters and throughout what the characters' actions are. That's why the ending is a little bit more surprising than I expected it to be. And you talked about the ending being kind of like a twist, if you will, or thrown at you, kind of coming out of nowhere. But the Pope also does a decision about John Lithgow's character, Lithgow's character, that nobody knows about. And there's a dispute over that, and whether or not that's factual. And you learn so much about John Lithgow's character by his denial, and you totally believe him. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is and I thought that character was about how human nature dictates that we'll do anything to undercut somebody if we want something. Even this Catholic faith-driven, what would Jesus do living that they have, they still are human beings. And so we make up gossip and drama that doesn't exist to banish somebody in the 8th grade or to make fun of somebody in the 8th grade or to bully somebody in the 8th grade. And we still do it throughout the rest of our lives. We just look older while we're doing it and act more mature while we're making these. Because I thought that was going to be, oh, shame on you for pointing the finger at somebody. You got that fact wrong. We need to bring this back down to this is an important religious event, not a human event. We're picking the next infallible person. And so that's a serious thing. So throughout the movie, you get these little scenes where the character is being described as they're talking about the action about somebody else or about an action they're going to do or that they're doing. And we talked about that with Hitchcock. That's really hard to do. Usually there's exposition to explain something in a narrative or exposition to explain something in that character, or somebody blatantly says, she is this, this, and this, and just throws it out at you. But to actually have dialogue with somebody else while you're telling the audience who you are without saying it, like direct lines behind saying it, that's hard to do. And they pull it off very well. That's why I thought the twist was going to be about Ralph Fiennes, because he almost seemed too pious for this movie. But that was his character, and that he took seriously. And that's why he had that job. Because
that's why the Pope named him.
Yes,
wouldn't allow him to resign. Yes.
Even though he had doubts like Christ did in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's like, you could take this chalice away from me. I can't drink from this cup. You got to tell me what's going on. And basically, Ralph Fiennes has that same conversation with himself, doesn't he? No?
Yeah, he does. Because
I don't want this job. Yeah.
And when he does that homily to them before the conclave starts, he says, there's one sin which I have come to fear above all others, certainty. Right. If there was only certainty and no doubt, there would be no mystery and therefore no need for faith. That is essentially the.
Wow, you're good.
I wrote that down, but that is the struggle of. I mean, that should be the struggle of anyone of any faith-based person is that there's never an ending. This is my opinion, obviously, but there's never an ending. There's never a finality to your faith journey. And so him displaying that in front of these cardinals who have, a lot of them, lived their whole life in the faith and risen to the heights of their faith. They've spent so much time in the sausage making part of faith and less time in the receiving of that I could totally see where they could be jaded or they could be completely divorced from the connection to God and more focused on the specifics. I see that in my industry, being a broadcast engineer. When I look at a newscast, I don't, specifically me as an engineer, I do not look at the content of the newscast. I look at, is that camera in focus? Like, is that shot framed properly? Is the lighting okay on there? Or is that person too dark or too light? Or are there any misspellings on that graphic? Like, those are the things that I look at when I watch a newscast, which is totally not what anybody else looks at when they watch the news. They just don't. But because I'm so integrated into that industry, that is the perversion of the newscast for me. That's what I get out of the newscast. So it's not, for me to ingest actual news stories, I can't watch a newscast. I have to read it.
Yeah, you have to read it.
Yeah, I have to. That's the only way I can get the content into me.
That's fascinating to me because I've just now come to the production value of things. I was I was telling you off podcast about American Horror Story, and I'm watching season 2, or I finished watching season 2. And I just, all of a sudden it dawned on me how great this show is lit, and that there is light coming in from that door and light coming in from that window, not just like regular light. It's stylistic light to make a point about whatever that room is or whatever, and how he makes certain, or whoever are directing these things. I think of Ryan Murphy, of course, being the quintessential, the showrunner. But I'm just now coming to that. I'm just now realizing that I've realized it. But I think it's because of you. And this podcast, I'm watching things in a different way. Now, a lot of times I will register it and I will allow it to make me feel, or allow it whatever feeling I'm having. And then later on, I'll analyze it and try to figure out what exactly did he mean by leaving that light off and that light on? Like, what is it? That kind of stuff. So it's new to me, but it's interesting because I've seen the backstage of theater. I've seen the backstage of production, film productions. And to me, I still can separate the two. When I go see a play, unless it's really not good.
Oh, no.
Well, the thing is that...
So that's obviously happened.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen something recently that I was like, whoa. Like, it was hurtful. It was painful. But what I do, and it's almost subconsciously, I just start rearranging things in my brain. Like, oh, well, maybe if that color of that window was this, and maybe if that curtain was this, and wait, she's saying this, but maybe if she walked in, like, my brain starts to rework it so I can understand what I'm watching.
Yeah.
It's not because I think I'm going to make it better. It's to make it make sense to me. So when none of that analytical thing happens and I'm blown away by it, that's because it all kind of worked. But there are times when I now recognize a lighting cue that makes sense for whatever I'm watching in the scene. And then later on, I'll go, oh, they used that color because of what she was talking about before. So it's not, it doesn't interrupt me. It doesn't stop me from enjoying what the product is. Like, I could probably still watch the news, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know,
that makes sense.
It's something that separates. I don't know why.
Well, and that's, as far as Conclave is concerned, this movie is so evenly directed that the times that Edward Berger does decide to crank up the lighting to essentially like do something that is unnatural lighting, it's very purposeful. Or like, there's a scene where there's a bomb and the slow motion of the bomb. And those are particular choices where there's only a handful of scenes that they made me feel like I was like, whoa, this is weird out of body experience associated with this movie. Like, this isn't real. This isn't right. This is off. And it's purposely done and it's stylistically done. And he only does it a couple of times. So it lands when that happens. And initially when that bomb went off, I was like, oh, that's not real. That's not actually happening. He's going to wake up from a dream. But that wasn't the case. And then it took me a couple, there were a couple lines, a couple things like, oh, well, it did actually happen. Okay, fine.
Yeah, because they mentioned something earlier on in the film.
Yeah. So there was that.
Also, sorry to interrupt, which is also interesting because you think they're mentioning it because he wants to not have any information to influence the conclave, to keep him sequestered. I don't want to know about that.
Yep.
Comes across as that's going to influence what I'm doing here. We can't know anything about that. But really what it is a clue to what's happening later on with that bomb going off. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I mean, that's it's a little bit of a taste of like what could happen in the future. And then the other time that really like stuck out to me was when Cardinal Benitez gets up and has his kind of like speech in the theater when all the cardinals are standing around, and the lighting is completely unrealistic. Like, everybody around him's in shadow. There's a huge spotlight on him. Yeah. It's very harsh light. It makes no sense in the context of the film and in the context of the situation. But it's very stylistic, and it's very kind of like, this is your moment to shine, and that it makes sense in the film, in the context of the film, but it doesn't make sense in the context of real life, which the rest of the film is shot in that way. In it's not documentarian, but it's an even lighting.
Well, yeah, but I think I agree with you, but I think that, and your eye is better at this than mine is, but there are a lot of things that are a little left of center throughout the film. There's a shot, and I think it's when he's hearing the nun argue in the other room.
Yeah.
The shot is the camera's all the way up in the corner, and you see Ralph Fiennes go into the door, and the room looks way longer than it actually does. It's a very odd shot for something
like a wide
that.
Angle shot. That's,
it's
Terry
like a
Gilliam
wide-angle
Brazil type thing.
Yeah, but it's the camera's in the right-hand corner of the room. shooting down at the door at the angle. It's a very off-putting in that scene with the Cardinals in that auditorium.
Yep.
I noticed that lighting, but that shot starts down low on one of the seats. That opening shot when you see them in there, and I thought that's unusual. Why is the camera down there? I mean, I didn't consciously think about it until later on, but there was something about it that unnerved me. There's a few times that the camera's in a position you're not exactly where it's not exactly where you expect it to be, and in a way, it throws the whole thing off balance on some level because. And I'm just kind of making this up as we're talking, but that camera shot of him in the bedroom, the camera's eavesdropping on him as he's eavesdropping on them.
Yeah.
And that camera shot in the auditorium puts you in a seat with the Cardinals.
Yes.
It puts you on their level in the beginning of that scene, which is an important position to be because then the unrealistic thing of the spotlight and all that other epic dramatic things happen.
And also the camera rises up and goes real high looking down. It's very stylistic. I mean, it's unnatural. It's the whole thing is unnatural, but it works. Cool. Me too. Yeah. It informs. I mean, it's another way to inform the viewer. Like, this is important. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And the thing that I loved about, and we talk about this a lot, the thing I love the most about it is it gave me a feeling to react to. Yeah. It's a visual, obviously, but it induced a feeling in me that maybe I wasn't even able to articulate at the moment, but it led me through that scene because that feeling triggered me into it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's his thumbprint in this film. Okay. It's the way that they go to the shot of them going when the buses show up. That's shot from real high on a balcony, obviously, because he's watching. Yeah. But it's also shot all the way to the right. And it's not looking down, it's looking over. It's a really odd shot. But it's a really strange and odd thing that they're doing. And that they're now moving from one place to the next, even though they're sequestered and they got these big vans. I mean, it's just... It makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. It seems anachronistic because it seems like these guys could be in like the 1600s, but now they're getting into buses with air conditioning.
Right.
And it's like, oh, what is the deal here? They're wearing robes that are straight out of the 1200s or something, and it's like, oh, okay, that doesn't make sense. But I think it's probably time to get into like super spoilers. And we should talk about the end and the scenes leading up to the end. So
it's too zippy.
If you haven't seen it,
that's my analytical study. It's too zippy.
The end.
Yeah,
I agree.
Which it kind of needed
I
to
agree.
be. Which it kind of need, and I don't even know if zippy is a word. Zippy?
Sure. Yeah. It's you could miss
dictionary.
it. You could miss it until you're 3/4 of the way through that last scene.
You're right.
Also, it assumes that everybody's on board with, we're definitely in spoilers now, everybody's on board with hysterectomy, everybody's on board with what that means, everybody's on board with all of that.
Sorry, just to backtrack, because you just reminded me of something. Not a criticism, just an observation. They don't really explain anything.
No.
They don't. If you don't know what that smoke is, you wouldn't understand what that was. They don't explain it. There's one little line in there.
They don't need to, though. I don't think they need to. It doesn't. So for somebody who's Catholic, maybe, or for somebody who, like, I knew about the different kinds of smoke just from previous times and all that stuff. But I don't think that you have to know what that smoke is. They do spend.
You have to know the significance of the gray one versus the white one, and he handles it very well. He doesn't spoon feed it. You can hear the crowd boo, or not booing, going, oh, when they don't
or saying, yay, at the end.
Totally, 100%. But and there's a little quippy line that he has about the smoke. Well, we don't want to let him down, something like that.
Or like, they won't be happy about this, or whatever.
Something like that. That said, I don't understand or know why they use a needle and thread to put the invitations.
That's kind of cool, though.
Totally. But now it's my responsibility to figure that out and do my own research. If I'm that intrigued by that, the director did his job by intriguing me. Now I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that the smoke, I always thought the smoke was from the ballots, but it's not. It's a separate thing.
Well, it has to be, because like the ballots are going to be the same whether they vote for someone as a majority or not. The same number of votes are coming in.
I just thought they threw some kind of powder on it that made it gray, or threw some kind of
that's essentially what they're doing. They're a supplementing
thing.
Yeah,
it's a separate tank with its all little like.
Yeah, it has like a little canister or whatever.
Thing, where they have to press the buttons and it all lights up, and they have to flick the thing.
But here's the thing. This would let's go the other way and say, like, why would anybody in that group associated with the conclave have the reason to explain what the smoke is?
100% understand what you're saying.
Because everybody knows what it is.
But we're not watching a real conclave, and we're not watching real people. And as a mature going audience, we should be able to fill in the blanks ourselves and accept what we see and hear as what we needed to see and hear. I'm just fascinated with the whole thing. So a little interjection here and there. It's a different movie, and it's not appropriate for this movie. I get that. You're 100% correct. But if we're going to have spotlights as if, Jesus Christ the Musical is happening all of a sudden in the middle of an auditorium with a bunch of cardinals sitting around, then we can have a little explanation of, taking a little bit of license, because he does say something. Ralph Fiennes says something. You're right. There is no way to do it, but I just like those details.
There should be.
I need to. Well, why can't the nuns whisper to each other about it? So
you have like an ignorant nun who's like associated with the conclave. Like,
listen,
what's all that about?
I was born and raised into the Catholic religion and went to Catholic school from the day I went to school to the day I graduated. Okay, and I looked at a couple Catholic colleges too. I would have never gotten in. So I know a lot about the Catholic religion, and I invested in it, and I believed in it, and I researched it, and I believed, and so I was faithful, and I know that language, and I know what they say next, and I know what happens next, and I even know some of the older traditions because I'm old enough to be of the ringing of the bells and some of the Latin and some of the smokes and mirrors that they've dropped since then. Yeah, I at least love the bells. Wish they'd bring those back.
You did go to services that were Latin only?
No, I have been to services that were Latin only, yes. But we did not go to services on a regular basis. We didn't go to church. We didn't go to mass, is what you would say. You would call it mass. But there is parts that were in Latin that have been taken out since then. And there are these bells that the altar boy used to ring at certain points to it's kind of like a soundtrack. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to really think about where my theatrical upbringing came from. Like, I thought it was just natural to me. And now the pomp and circumstance of the Catholic Church.
So you're I was in theater when I was a kid. It just happened to be a church.
Absolutely. And on top of that, in our Catholic school, we used to have a spring musical every year. And every class had to get up and do 2 songs. Tie a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree. Those kind of things, right? Mm-hmm. And it all had themes and stuff like that. And I was all about it. And they also brought in theatrical productions that we would go and watch in the gym. Yeah, and I saw a version of a play called Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. And this is how much... Do you know that play?
Well, isn't that based on the Mark Twain book?
I don't know.
I think it's a Mark Twain short story, yeah.
Oh, maybe. Well, anyway, when I was a kid, they asked for a volunteer. Yeah. And, of course, this teenage, maybe even older African-American guy goes, I'll do it in plain clothing. And I was damn mad that they didn't pick me. It never dawned on me that he was a plant, that he was part of the show. I thought that guy's really adventurous. He's doing all that. I would have done it too. But I was mad. But I was a quiet kid. I would have never raised my hand. But I was mad. Why didn't they pick me? I legit thought he was, for real, just a person.
Just gonna pick somebody.
And we had Catholic uniforms. We had uniforms. So it's not like we all just looked like regular kids going to school. We had blue ties and white shirts.
That's very theatrical. I mean, wearing a uniform, being like that, all of that is you had a wardrobe.
Britney Spears made a career out of it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the mature adult movie we were
From
talking
Britney
about.
Spears to the Conclave. So yes, let's talk
What
about.
podcast are you going to get that from? I mean,
Let's talk about the reveal at the end of someone who now what do you think? Okay, first of all, it doesn't matter. I will say that it doesn't matter what reproductive parts Cardinal Ramirez has. Just the fact that the Cardinal Ramirez presents as a particular sex and has the reproductive parts of the opposite sex. Period.
right.
That's the issue. This is a confrontation of the status quo of the Catholic Church, and I guess because of the pageantry and the procedure, it would be interesting to see how they would wind that back. But the film doesn't even give you the messiness of that. It just ends.
But it ends with that brilliant shot of
the
three
nuns.
and I think they're beginning nuns, novice. No, what is it called? It's called something. Because they're not in the same habit as the other nuns are. They're in all white. I think they're like the beginning. No.
Like the minor league nuns? What are
No, they're not nuns yet. They're studying to be nuns. They haven't been blessed, and they haven't done the ritual or the mass that makes them nuns. Okay, I love a shot in a movie that allows the audience to just fill in all the blanks themselves. And the subtlety of that smile on Ralph Fiennes' face at the end is so satisfying. But the movie ends with the three young ladies. My thing is, okay, so I'm thinking this movie's quite brilliant now that I'm talking about it more, because I was not lit up after this movie. I was satisfied and I was intrigued. But since I've started to think about it, and it's only been a couple of days, it started to grow on me in a different way. You talked about the conflict with John, or we talked about the conflict with John Lithgow's character, and how there was a secret that came out. And then we had the other Cardinal has a secret with the other nun, that Isabella Rossellini.
IDME,
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, he's good.
He's been in a lot of National Theater stuff. He did Amadeus. He did Salieri in their Amadeus production, and he was very good. He's in a ton of things.
Yeah, I think I've seen him before. I was looking through some of his stuff. I didn't...
I think he's one of those guys that's just always reliable and always there. Yeah. You just think he's always there, and you don't even think twice about him because he just does his job and he does it well. And when he sits on the bed after he says, "You will not be the Pope," it's a really great moment he has there. But anyway, so you accept these conflicts, you accept these backdoor deals that they're making about all this stuff, and the switching and the swapping of who they think should be the front runner and who we're going to vote for. And all of a sudden, this guy gets one vote. He just showed up. And then they explain his being a secret in a very good way. I mean, it makes sense. If his mission was in, Afghanistan.
Kabul, in Afghanistan.
Right. I mean,
if they know you're a Christian, you're done.
Yeah, you're done. Like, literally done. So that all made sense. What I had a bit of a hard time digesting the first time, the time that I saw it, and the immediate moment that I saw, was that he was meant to be a mysterious character, and then they explained what his mystery was and why the Pope kept it secret and all that other stuff, and that made sense, and that was backed up because the Pope had a secret. Well, he didn't have a secret. He just didn't live long enough to tell people about John Lithgow. And then the other priest or the other cardinal had a secret. So that kind of aligned itself. I thought that when they reveal the fact that he has female reproductive parts, it happens so quickly, your mind just can't compute it. And I thought, okay, wait. He says the thing about, monastery is a very cloistered thing and it's a very covered thing. So that's how he got away with not revealing who he was.
Yes.
But so he was female posing as male, or was he hermaphrodite?
There's definitely a possibility that Cardinal Ramirez could have lived most of their life without even knowing that they had female reproductive organs. So, but they don't give the audience time to think about that too much, and they also don't give Cardinal Ramirez the time to explore their life. It is very tacked on at the end, and
Yeah.
we have to deal with all of that and wrap all of that up and then move on and then leave the theater and drive home. Like that's what we're left with. And that was my kind of like, so my big question for you is, and that's what I've been thinking of for the last 24 hours since I've seen the movie, is would the film have been satisfying or worthy or whatever you want to call it if that wasn't a part of it? If Ramirez was named as the Pope and we would have moved into the new era of the Catholic Church in this story, would that have been satisfying, or did this movie need the button that was the confrontation of the Catholic Church to a messy, real life, just not buttoned up and not tied up with a bow Pope? Not this, like, because they dance around it the whole film of like, nobody's perfect. The people that they were going to name, one of the ones who was getting the most votes had dalliances with a nun when he was 30 years old and the nun was 19. And okay, maybe they had a kid. Okay, well, it's not a big deal because, he did other things that were great. It's messy, but no big deal. And then same thing, John Lithgow had simony charges against him. He was paying people off to give him votes to become, well, it's messy, but no big deal. And now this ultimate like ending of the film is like the Pope that they chose is quote unquote messy. This real life human was beneficial to the faith, to the Catholic Church, and to people through the Catholic Church, and can be beneficial to the Catholic Church as the Pope. So can the church move forward with this? Would it have been satisfying if this wasn't the end of the film?
This is probably not an answer you want, but that's kind of impossible to answer if you think about it, because all you can do is imagine the film ending without that moment in it. You're not experiencing it and then having a feeling about it and then wondering about it later on. You're wondering about it later on because that moment happens in the film, because that character is what it is. And as for all of the messiness to everybody else, there's definitive answers to their messiness. No, no, and no. No, you're not going to be Pope. No, you can't be Pope. You got a kid, dude.
Yeah, but if
she was barely an adult, you're not a good human being in that moment in your life. No.
If Ralph Fiennes wasn't there, they totally would have. Both of those guys could have been Pope.
But Ralph Fiennes is an essential character, so that character, it connotates that character would find those things out. Maybe not that character, but the character who is in the person in that position. That's their job to pretty much figure that all out. And he goes so far as to figure it out by breaking that seal, which was shocking to me.
Yep.
First of all, he could have gotten in that door without breaking that seal. It's like, come on, dude.
Symbolic.
Did you not watch
but that's
Nancy
a real
Drew
thing.
or
I did read
the Hardy Boys? You could have gotten it.
That seal is a real thing. Like the way all of the procedure is a real thing. But,
absolutely.
But I think that I think what the film is essentially asking is how many popes before this pope in real life potentially had this kind of stuff in their background.
Interesting. That's interesting. That is not what I thought about.
Oh. Okay.
What I thought about was I was more intrigued, and I did look up hermaphrodite, and that is a proper term. I honor and respect language, and language changes. Yep. And if it's not appropriate, then it's not appropriate. But me misspeaking is a misspoken moment. So if it is wrong, I'll take and learn from that. But anyway,
there's also no guarantee that he ever had any male sex organs. They never were explicit about that.
They weren't. So that's the question for me. Yeah. Because I think if he had both, they probably would have said that, right? So let me first ask you this. Is it trickery you don't like? Is it a trick? Is it a M. Night Shyamalan reveal? Is it a
but the M. Night Shyamalan reveal? Yeah, the M. Night Shyamalan reveal, he lays for his good ones. He lays breadcrumbs throughout the film, and it's like, no, now go watch the movie again. Check this out.
No, it's there in this film too, though. There's things maybe not directly about that cardinal.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's definitely like a payoff. It's like it should be a setup payoff, but to me, it feels like a payoff.
But there's a mystery about him. And they try to make the mystery about where he's from and where he came from and how all of a sudden he's there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is a little zippy. It does happen a little bit too quick, but I think the question is, not for me. For me is not, well, what other popes in the past have had some kind of discretion or digression? What's the word I'm looking for?
Indiscretion?
Indiscretion. Thank you. Or some kind of, I don't know, 3 nipples. I don't know.
We can't have a pope with 3 nipples.
I'm watching Friends right now. And Chandler has 3 nipples. His nubbin. Anyway, is the third one. Anyway, I can't believe that I can reference one and go right back to a movie about the Catholic Church.
All right, now let's talk about Conclave.
Okay. So what I was intrigued about was the fact that this is the person they picked to be the Pope, needed to be a little bit more explained why all of a sudden they all switched to him. Because he goes from 1 vote to 5 votes to winning.
No. I clocked this because once he got the 1 vote, I was like, all right, well, nobody even knows this guy. Somebody voted for him because he explicitly says that he voted for Cardinal Lawrence for Ralph Fiennes' character. So,
right, so he didn't vote for himself the first time.
Yeah, I take him at his word that he did not vote for himself. So that first time, somebody else voted for him. So it went 1, 2, 4, and then like not 8. It was because I was like, oh, is this like a power of 2 type thing? But it was like 1 vote, then 2 votes, then 4 votes, then 9 or something like that. And then it got a little messy after that. I'm not really sure what happened after that, but
and then he wins.
And then he wins. Yeah. But he wins after he wins after his speech, which I get. I understand.
Is he in that montage where because sometimes it gets a little confusing who's who, and the names are tough, and the characters just say them once, and you're like, who's who, what, yeah.
He's not in the montage
he's not in the Stanley Tucci, the other guy.
Yeah, the one where everybody else is gone except for when they say the person's name, it shows the guy and all the other cardinals are gone. He's not in that montage.
Why? I wonder why.
Why, right?
Well, I wonder why.
Yeah.
That would have been like, oh, they're going in this direction. Oh, this guy has been in Afghanistan. He has served the Lord differently. He knows what it's like to put the faith on the line. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Pope has to do. The Pope is the leader of the faith, is the one who has to, I hate to say toe the line after I just said the line, but that's what the Pope does. The Pope is the leader.
He's also more like Christ in that he's behind the scenes and not like the head of, it's very kind of like, all right, I'm going to do some stuff, but like, don't tell a bunch of people about it because like, we're going to keep this under wraps. Like he's doing the work without getting the glory,
Isn't that what Christ says to do? Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Is that the same thing?
So
Are you impressed yet how much I know about the Bible?
You may know more scripture than I do. So there you go.
I know. I'm proud of that too. I actually love the Bible. I actually love it, but I'm a storyteller and I'm a story sponge. So, and the pomp and circumstance and it's theatrical as hell in the Bible.
Yeah, that's true.
And plus, I think Jesus is just all right with me. I like Jesus. I think Jesus is cool. Like the whole, everything he ever said, I'm like, yep, I like that. Yep.
Right?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. I'm good with that. Oh, wait, he never creates a miracle or does a miracle that's not essential to, 1, a story, and 2, to whatever the needs of the story is. That to me is impressive. He just doesn't multiply the loaves and fishes just because. He has to feed those people. It's essential. It's essential. I love that. And really, I'm not a very religious person now in my life, but I do know some. So I think the moment at the end of the film when you find out who he is or what his secret is, you're not even aware there is a secret.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit much to absorb. Now, if he had mysteriously shows up, so there's a mystery about him, and he is, is he Latin American? Latin? Where's he from? Latin?
Yes, he speaks Spanish, so he may be from Spain. He may be from Central America, Mexico.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yet. But he's not from Afghanistan. He's not from that region. Okay.
Nope.
There's a mystery about him, and I like that. I just think that maybe one little more glimpse or one more little beat of pay attention to this guy, because by the time he becomes the Pope, you kind of forgot about him. he's kind of like, I mean, you kind of are. It's
Yeah.
kind of a shock he's the one they picked. There's no real indication that he's the one they're focusing on to where they have to have this amount of majority. That said, I'm going to contradict myself. The less you know about him makes the ending way more powerful than it might be if you knew more about him. But everybody has a secret. Everybody gets outed. The other thing about the reveal that I like is how they handled it. It was very matter of fact. This is who I am. It's not going to change a thing about what we're doing. And wink, wink, isn't this kind of a cool thing? And Ralph Fiennes is, yes, I think so too. Wink, wink, smile, subtle smile. Let's not be overacting here. Boom, end of movie. And then when you figure out that women have never, well, if you put it together, that women have never had a seat at this table. And, you know, they can be nuns, but not priests. And they've often talked about ordaining women as priests. It's been a back and forth thing since I was a kid. And, you know, some people are for it, some people aren't. There's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the church is never going to progress if we don't kind of force it. And by force it, you don't force it, you allow it to organically happen. And then if and when this Pope dies, it gets let out that he had a uterus or he was cross-sexed or whatever.
Yeah,
it may
they work
be.
within the system. That's exactly what they did. I mean,
That's
worked
how you
within
change it.
the system.
See, the world didn't come to an end because somebody with a uterus consecrated host. It's okay, people.
And that's the interesting part to me. It's like, so is this Pope going to have a 40-year reign, and then at the end it's going to be like,
He's
hey,
young.
look at all the stuff that this Pope did. Oh, by the way, this Pope had a uterus.
Yeah.
So does that discount everything that they did for the church?
No, it just, well, sure, that's what people are going to think, I bet.
Some people,
because people are judgy people. But I think it's meant to say, as the three young ladies are walking across the courtyard, the opportunity will be different in their lifetime when this is found out.
Yeah.
Whenever it's found out.
We don't even know when it's found out. That's the thing, is that it leaves it open. It's like, are they going to go out there and be like, this is your new Pope, and by the way, they have a uterus? Or are they going to just be like, hey, check out your new Pope?
He's going to go and be an awesome Pope for 40, 50 years, and then somehow it'll get revealed somewhere near close to his death, and they'll be like, look, women can be okay as priests. Look, they were a Pope this whole entire time.
Yep.
And so it really plays on a lot of things going on in society, a lot of fears going on in society now, a lot of people with the trans issues and a lot of people with pronoun issues. And I'm not making a statement about any of that. I'm saying that people are in fear of things just because they don't know better. And that's okay. I mean, it's okay. And sometimes you kind of have to show people things and give them examples, sort of sleight of hand type of situation. And you go, see,
well,
two men being married, it's not that big of a deal. Look how fun a gay wedding is. It's not that big of a deal. You know, it's like,
it's a confrontation. This film sets up a confrontation in the Catholic Church. And I think similarly, that's the same kind of a thing. When you're confronted with something that is other, then you're forced to evaluate it. I think there are societies that shield themselves from those confrontations, and they can move forward in their lives, but that causes stagnation, and it also alienates people. And so there's the trade-off. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can find us on X. We're at Actor Engineer. And just search for us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast. And we'll see you next time.